I gotta ask, what did you think of my mock off season?
I thought it was good. I
Did
liked it.
you? Did
Yeah, it
you?
was great.
I don't know, I was reading some of the comments. Some people were not too happy with me.
I feel that's under all of our posts, you know. People don't like our takes. That's okay. They'll
Someone
learn to
was
like them.
someone was like, "It's so easy to make a mock trade." I'm just like, "Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
fun.
fun. That's the
Yeah,
fun."
it's the point. Yeah, you could do it too. Send it to us. We'd love to see them.
They're
But
cowards.
I thought it was really, thought it was in the realm of reality. Um,
I tried to be realistic. The one trade I wasn't too like I knew even when I made it and I put it in there, I knew that it's not going to happen. I don't think
it's the Clifton one.
it was the New Jersey trade. I didn't
Yeah.
think, but it sort of makes sense to me. Like I don't think the value was off. I just don't think New
I,
Jersey would take on 6 million because they're also looking for a starting goalie. But I don't know. I thought logistically it made some sense.
yeah. It'd probably come down to whatever New Jersey was looking at, but if I was the Sabres GM and if it was up to me, I would do that trade. Um, but I feel like the we've been talking about Nikolai Ehlers for so long. I feel like it's like the John Gibson thing where you feel like it's just never gonna happen, but it's always like, rumors and his name is thrown in everywhere. I hope it's not that, but it just seems like one of those things that's just like always dangling in front of your face and it's just never gonna get done.
Yeah, it's definitely been a tease. I don't know. It's gonna hurt if he goes somewhere close to just in the East. It'll hurt, but it was fun to live in Fantasyland for a little bit. So if you haven't already, go check out my mock off season. It's on all our. You can. The link is on our Twitter or in our link tree, which you can find in our bios. But fun exercise every year. I always enjoy doing it.
hmm I'd go into the off season with that lineup. I think
Uh,
that'd be a constructive off season. What else would you want him to do besides getting another big fish? I don't know.
I mean, I for the sake of being edgy, I like tossed around the idea like should I do like a Samuelson surprise trade, but I was like, I want to do a Philly trade because I feel like it's gonna happen. There's something going on with Philly.
I
Those rumors
don't.
just won't go away.
If it's Travis Konechny, sure. If it's Scott Lawton,
I was
I
thinking about
no,
Konechny
please
because
no.
like it's like I don't know. I was thinking in my head today actually, just I don't know, connecting dots. But like it's clear like whether it's Ehlers or Buchnevich or just any of the big top six names, and they're all 1 year to free agency, and Konechny's right there, and he's on a team where they've been supposedly talking to for a long time, and Flyers might want another high draft pick, especially now that Coder Gauthier got traded a while back. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Konechny.
No, me neither. It's another name that's been thrown around there.
Yeah. Oh well, we're almost there. We're almost to the off season where fiction does become reality.
We basically are in the off season.
We're
30 out of the
close.
32 teams
We're
are.
close. I don't know. I feel like Florida has it wrapped up, but I don't know. It's there's that game. It wasn't like the Oilers just like beat them like 5-2 or something. Like opening the floodgates like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I hope this series doesn't drag out. Just end the season.
please. Please.
Well, in any case, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah,
And I'm JP.
and as always, we'll be talking to you about all things Buffalo Sabres hockey and a little bit of the wider NHL. So today's going to be a little bit different. If you, whether it was our social media or maybe someone else brought it up, this past Sunday, June 16th, it's been 4 years since Kevyn Adams was hired to be GM of the Buffalo Sabres. Time's flown by.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. It really doesn't. And you go back 4 years ago? The roster was so much different. It's kind of crazy to look at. And I guess one thing that's stayed constant is not being in the playoffs, but you expected that, especially after you know, when he took over, he had to fire the entire organization, start from scratch.
Yeah, it was funny because for anybody that doesn't know, JP, Christian, and I, we all got the chance to go to Blue and Gold Insights with Lindy Ruff and Kevyn Adams, which, first of all, great event by the Sabres. Great to be back in the arena. Great to see Lindy in person.
Hmm.
Very nice event put on by the Sabres. But I don't know what question prompted it, but Adams was talking about, I think somebody asked him about how he thinks he's evolved as GM. And he was telling a story about his first day on the job. And like he mentioned he was in the Bahamas, or like he was in Florida or somewhere. Like he was with the Pagulas, and he started telling the story about Lou Lamoriello, which was pretty funny. But just he finishes the story and gets ready to move on, and I just whisper to Christian, and then he fired the entire organization,
Rather
including
promptly.
including someone accidentally who he had to then hire back.
Roller coaster of a day for that guy.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So for today's episode, we're kind of just going to take, I guess, a trip down memory lane, but it's more of a retrospective, like examining how we got to where we are. We're 4 years into the Adams era. It's both felt very quick and also a long time at the same time. So, how has Kevyn Adams evolved? How has he evolved as a GM, or are we no different than the? Are we in a different place than where we began? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it's funny that, like, if we want to start at the beginning, his first season as GM, that just feels like it doesn't even feel like he was GM that season. Obviously, completely different roster, completely different roster makeup. Head coach, obviously different. Well, at least for a little bit. Totally different vibe. And even just going back, if you want to go back to the day he was hired, the fan reception, all time low. He
Yeah,
comes
not
in,
great.
he's basically laughed at as the guy who was running the Harbor Center is now the now the Buffalo Sabres GM. And the biggest of all, people thought he was going to be a yes man.
Yeah,
Like he was basically going to be a puppet for Pagula. He was going to be someone that he was just going to do Terry Pagula's bidding. Um, that's definitely what I remember most about that time.
yeah. I remember waking up that day that Jason Botterill got fired. Funny enough, I was on vacation, so I'm like in an unfamiliar place. Waking up and just like look at my phone. It's 9:30, and I'm like, am I seeing this right?
Is this heaven?
Did they just fire Jason? I'm like, and for like a minute, I was just like, thank God we're free of this man. This guy was a train wreck. He was a disaster. I was like, best of luck to him wherever he goes. And then all of a sudden, I just see in text below it, I say, Kevyn Adams has been hired as the Sabres general manager. And then all the reaction to everyone else on Twitter was like, is this not interim? What are they talking about? That he's the GM. They didn't
Oh,
even
that's
do a
right. He didn't
search.
even have
It's
the interim
interim.
tag.
They're
That's
like,
right.
they're like,
I forgot about that.
they're like, it's interim, right? This is an interim GM. This guy's never been a general manager anywhere. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do another first year guy. And everyone was freaking out.
It was a
And
crazy day.
it was an insane day because
Then
oh, you know what?
a few hours later, then your phone starts blowing up. It's like, holy shit, the Sabres are firing like the entire, well, not the Sabres, but half of PSE is being laid off in like one fell swoop.
Tough times,
And it's
man.
like even the national insiders were talking about it. I still remember, I think LeBron, was it LeBron? Someone dubbed it like Bloody Tuesday because it was just so many people lost their jobs in an instant, and just wild, wild,
You ever
wild day.
you think that like COVID had anything to deal with that too? Like
I
it
mean,
was
yeah,
like
that
a few
was
months
June.
in.
It was
It was
June.
June.
So it had been going on for 3 months. The super yacht was under construction.
Oh, thank God. Is it finished? Please tell me it's finished.
But yeah, and the NHL was postponed, so it's not like the owners were
Hmm.
bringing in any revenue. I mean, I'm sure Pagula knew. I'm sure they knew the financial ramifications that were coming. I'm sure they knew a flat cap was coming.
Yeah.
So
It it sucked too. Um, Obviously everyone losing their jobs the way they did. That's really hard for a new GM to come in and do that. Um, I just remembered. I was at home. I was at the lake when they released the blue and gold jerseys, and that's when I got my 68 Victor Olofsson pre-ordered. Um, but yeah, that was a really, really tough time for the Sabres. And going into we didn't know when hockey was going to be back, obviously. There was no timetable set in place. I think the bubble going on,
it
or they haven't
wasn't.
done the
I
bubble yet.
wonder. I wonder
It was
if
a couple
we.
months later.
I wonder if the Sabres. Well, they probably wouldn't have fired their GM if they still thought they had a chance of getting into the bubble. But I'm sure they had like the layout format. I want to say because what the playoffs in general are usually like April to June. So I remember the cup was lifted like in September. So it probably
Hmm.
started like late July. So I'm sure they had the format basically nailed down. But no, hockey wasn't back yet. Um, I'm sure they knew the playoffs were going to happen, but nobody knew what was going on in the NHL for the following season.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a crazy time.
Yeah, and the fan reception got even worse that later after the cup was lifted because the draft was the draft in November?
It was in October.
It was in October.
I'm pretty sure it was in October. I think it was in October. Maybe.
And well, here or there.
I
I
know
guess
free
the date doesn't
agency
really matter.
was. I know
Yeah,
free agency was in October.
but Kevyn Adams, with his first pick as a general manager, took a well-known prospect out of the Ottawa 76's, no, Jack Quinn. And everyone lost their minds
And
again.
yeah, it
Everyone
really
was clowning
it started
us.
with a bang. His tenure really started with a bang. Um,
Oh
I
man.
guess it's tough because it's 4 years ago, so I guess I don't have the timelines exactly matched up, but I'll have to check. When was when was the 2020 NHL draft? October 6th.
So like right when the season should start.
Yeah. So I just want to see, was that his first like official? Because there's only one thing that I think he could have done before that. If we really want to kick off his first big move.
Oh, like a free agent?
No, it wasn't that. It was something else.
Hold on, I'm trying to figure this
It
out.
was a trade.
Oh, was it the Risto trade?
No, 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 because that was after the
Oh,
season.
that was yeah, that was the next season. I forgot Risto was on that 32nd place team.
Come on, I know you can remember. I know it's tough to remember that he was a Sabre, but this was a huge deal at the time, and it was
Was
before.
it
Oh, this was like a month before the draft. It was a 1-for-1.
um a 1-for-1?
Yes, he's a
Hold
cursed.
on.
He's a cursed Sabre. He
Oh
sat
God.
next to Dylan Cousins in the locker room during that first season.
Who am I missing something?
It
I
was
can't
Eric
remember who it is.
Stahl.
Oh, wait, Eric Stahl went
Eric Stahl was his
then?
first move. He traded 1-for-1 Marcus Johansson for Eric Stahl on September 16th.
Oh, oh my God, man.
Which
It's a good
I remember
move.
thinking
I
like
thought
it
it was a
was
great move.
it's like you have Marcus Johansson, who is, first of all, he's not a center. He's definitely not a second line center. At the very least, you had Eric Stahl, who had been that in Minnesota. Unfortunately, he just fell off a cliff the moment he stepped in Buffalo.
There's a constant to go along with, everyone falling off a cliff playing under a certain guy. Um, I think we'll get to it later, but I think that he was not Eric Stahl. I think this particular person was the reason that this rebuild was so drawn out.
So then we get to the draft. So tenure starts off pretty good, pretty solid trade, and then the Jack Quinn pick happens. And I just remember the lead up because everybody thought the Sabres liked Rossi because Botterill and his team liked Rossi. And then at the last moment, I want to say it was Chad Dinaminis. He was like, "Stay tuned for Jack Quinn." And I just remember watching draft night. JP and I were watching with one of our other good buddies who follows the NHL, and he's into prospects. And I just remember listening to that pick, and it was from the Ottawa 67s, and me and JP are like, "Yes!" And he's like, "Wait, Jack Quinn, no, no, you got the wrong one."
Dude, the funny thing about that was I was at work during the draft, so I couldn't show up to the draft. I would have been watching it with you guys, but I was at work, peak COVID, and I have it on my phone. I'm trying to stream it. And then I mean, I wasn't too familiar with prospects at that point in time. So he says Jack Quinn, and I'm just like, "Oh, okay. Just winger. Seems like he's good." And I text you guys immediately. And I'm like, "What do you guys think of this? I think it's an all okay pick." And they're like, "It wasn't Marco Rossi. It should have been Marco Rossi. We needed a center. What are we doing? You messed up." Someone posts an Instagram story saying that this is the wrong guy. Just I was like, all right, I guess. Another kick in the mouth, but
Yeah. Hey, you know what? It panned out pretty well.
it's worked out.
You
It
know what?
has
He
worked
got his
out.
guy. I don't want to say it was Adam's guy. You never know. I mean, we know the scouting staff was bare bones by that point, but they saw something they liked in him. I remember he had, I think, 52 goals in that draft eligible season. He wasn't even playing with Rossi, so they saw something they liked, and props to them because so far, Rossi's coming off a pretty good rookie season, but I think Quinn has shown himself to be the better player. And for people that were down on that pick, he redeemed himself the next day because his next trade, he trades up to grab JJ Peterka, who had somehow fell to the second round, and just like that, like bang.
If you're redrafting that class, is he going top 10?
He's in contention. I
There's a
think so.
conversation to be made.
I think so. It
And he
was
went
weird at the time. It was weird at the time that he fell, and another person, they knew he was good. He was their guy, and just like that, and with a snap of a finger, he totally restocked their draft pool because going into that draft, you had Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelsson, who people were not high on, Ryan Johnson, and Luukkonen. Like, that was your prospect pool.
That's crazy to think
And
that
with
many years ago that was it.
And with 2 picks, you've got projected top 6 forwards. And I think that's going to be the common theme you see here. He's drafted well, at least on paper, for the most part. That has definitely been the strength of Kevyn Adams. Now, sure, some things have fell into his lap, and he's taken chances on players. Somebody like Isaac Rosen, who probably hasn't boomed as much as they wanted on draft day. Or, I don't know, we'll see what Noah Ostlund turns into, where those are 2 guys where they kind of took off the board high. But they've drafted well. Their second-round picks haven't been amazing. Kisakov and obviously Topias Leninen. But their high-end drafting has been well. And even their lower-end drafting has been well. But we'll get past that. On to that season. So we get to the offseason, and I think were we talking about this last episode? We just so happened to be talking about like the Taylor Hall signing and just the lead up to it, because you had their first signing was signing Zemgus Girgensons to a 3-year, $6.6 million contract.
insane decision. Moving
which
on.
is nuts because you listen to that and you're like, okay, Zemgus Girgensons, fourth line winger, $2.2 million. Then they signed Tobias Reeder for $700K. Like Girgenson's a better player, but similar tier there.
That was, I think Terry was just like, hey, you've been around here long enough. Here's a little bonus.
And then they signed Matt Irwin, and then Brandon Davidson, and then they signed Cody Eakin for 2 years at 2.25 million.
I forgot Matt Irwin and Brandon Davidson existed.
And you're just like, okay, this is exactly how I thought it would go. Kevyn Adams just doesn't. He's not building this team to win, and that just out of nowhere, day I don't know 2 of free agency at like 8 o'clock at night. Taylor Hall signs with Buffalo for 1 year, $8 million.
Yeah, it's kind of looking back on it, head scratcher because you're right. Wasn't building the team to win with that, with those pieces around them. And it was that was the Achilles heel of this organization going back how many years? They had a great core. You could see how the players have turned out going to other teams. They had a great core. They just had absolutely no support around them. Just nothing.
And I think this is an interesting conversation. Who do you think is more responsible for that offseason? Do you think Kevyn Adams had say for the most part, or was this a Kruger built team?
No, I think it was a Kevyn Adams job. I think he took a lot of input from Kruger. I'm sure Kevyn Adams wanted to at least get Ralph Kruger, the guys he sought fit for this roster and his style of play, ass. But um, I think it was a team effort. Uh, I- we've seen Adams as being a very collaborative guy. You've seen that interview with Jerry Fortin on that draft day where he was, moved to tears because he felt like in past years he wasn't being listened to and the GM wasn't taking any input from anyone else other than himself. And I think Kevyn Adams came in and changed all that. So I'm betting that it was more of a joint effort, but Ralph Kruger eventually sunk this team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't I don't know if we'll ever know, but I think Hall I mean Kruger being here definitely played into that one. I think, that was the connection.
Right.
Hall had his best season aside, he had his breakout season in Edmonton under Kruger. So, yeah, it wasn't a pretty first off season, but at that point, who knows how much money they were playing with? Who knows who was coming to Buffalo during COVID at that point in the drought? Um, it's really amazing that they got Taylor Hall to sign there. I know they
We're
threw the bag at him compared to other teams, but still.
we were all blinded by that trade. We were like,
Yep.
Eric Stahl's the center, taking over Marcus Johansson, and we got Taylor Hall. Playoffs, here we come. And if you look at that team's roster construction, like the top guys, not bad. They just had nothing. Again, they had nothing else.
They were just cursed. That was a
Maybe they were,
cursed
yeah, they were
team.
cursed
That was
too.
a cursed team. Well, then that team falls apart. And
Immediately.
it wasn't immediately, but they came out of the gate 500. Then everybody got COVID, and then
Taxi squad
and then
inbound.
they lost, and then they lost, and then they lost times 6. Well, actually, then they lost 12 times. Right? Was it 12? Was it the third? Was it the 12th loss or the 13th loss that got Kruger fired? I don't remember.
Does it even matter? It's such a ridiculous number.
Well, 12 or 13 games in, Kruger gets fired. And, Don Granato, who nobody knew who the hell he was, gets hired as head coach, interim head coach. And, the Sabres see a pretty successful end to the season. But you look at that year's trade deadline. Montour goes to Florida for a third. The infamous Taylor Hall, Curtis Lazar for Anders Bjork in a second. And then Eric Stahl for a third and a fifth, and he would go on to make it to the Cup final. It was definitely Adams' introduction to tearing the team down, something he would have to come to know over the following months. That Montour trade doesn't look the greatest, but I think we know with the Taylor Hall trade, Hall reportedly nixed a deal to the Islanders that would have gotten the Sabres a first. And honestly, getting a third round pick for Eric Stahl, God damn it, Kevin. Good job. Good job. That Eric Stahl, that's some good work.
Yeah. Just a terrible season. That's all I'm going to say. Just awful.
And if you didn't think it could get worse, the locker cleanouts.
Literally had to be the absolute basement.
Risto, then Reinhart, then Eichel, all in succession on one day. Looking back on it, it's funny to think that day wasn't going to go like that. I mean, Risto had wanted out for years earlier. Reinhart was a year away from free agency, and they had just given him another one-year deal. And then you had Eichel, who hadn't been seen with the team in months and was hurt, and you weren't getting any new news. I feel like they had to have had some inclination of what was going to go down that day. But then that day happens, and that could be argued as the darkest day in franchise history.
It probably is, to be honest with you.
Years of suffering, all for nothing.
But also, it's like, when I think about that, I understand being frustrated by losing and losing and losing and losing and losing. And yes, again, there's a lot of frustration that goes into that, and calling out the organization was completely warranted. But the one thing that never sat right with me was, I don't know, it just felt like they were bashing the team and the name, and just like, you guys are the ones who sucked. You guys sucked ass. You were so bad. This is on you. You guys sucked.
Christian was defending how good they were a few minutes ago.
No. But yeah, I mean,
no,
listen,
I know what you mean.
I'm saying in a vacuum,
I'll say this:
that lineup is good.
Risto was sick of playing for the team. Reinhart was just ready for a divorce. Jack was ready. He came with fighting words. He had seen enough. He wanted out, or he just wanted surgery.
Jack, I get Jack being upset. He should have gotten that surgery, and I've always defended that he should have been able to get that surgery. But again, that's the one thing that never sat right with me. Like, I understand the frustration and all that, but it went to a point where it was just like, all right, you're kind of trashing the team that I grew up watching, and there's a little bit of, fire inside of me that's saying like, hey, you guys are the ones who sucked on the ice. Why didn't you just play better? And Ralph Kruger was obviously that answer.
So that was the point of no return. And we kind of move into phase 2 of the Adams era. The teardown, the rebuilds, 1 year in, all those years of losing, all those years of having hope, false hope, it was all for nothing. And now it's on this first-time GM, a year in, to figure it out. And I don't think there was a single person that thought he was going to do it. Well, maybe he had a few, but I think everybody, you had to realize it was the right thing to do. They were just, their prospect pool stunk. Even with the additions of Quinn and Peterka, they needed more. And, their core players wanted out. Draft day 2021. I still look at this trade and I smile, man. Rasmus Ristolainen, after years of rumors, finally gets dealt to the Philadelphia Flyers for Robert Hagg, a 2021 first and a 2023 second.
Just a great day. I remember that day. Again, I was at work. For once, you open Twitter and everyone's like, "Oh, the Sabres fleeced the Flyers." It was crazy.
Universally. I could not believe they got a top 15 pick for that guy.
And a second. And a replacement defenseman.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And those picks, they were going to select Isaac Rosen, and they got Anton Wahlberg in the second round. So, yeah, just a trade that even if Rosane and Wahlberg, they don't look good on paper, that's just good on Kevyn Adams. You get a first, a second, and a roster player for a guy 1 year removed from free agency. They go into that draft. They win the lottery, by the way. They go in and they select Owen Power. And I don't know if much credit needs to be given, but look, that was an interesting time, a very interesting draft. There were a lot of doubters of Owen Power. Obviously, they were in on they supposedly really liked William Eklund at the time, and then Matty Beniers was the consensus number 2 or number 1. But they went with Power, and it's been a tumultuous discourse. But if you listen to this show, you know that he's been really good since being selected, and that looks like the right pick.
Yeah, he's not the flashiest first overall pick in the world, but I will say that it was the correct pick to select first overall.
And even Isaac Rosen, who, we don't know what's going to happen with him. He's definitely not on, he's not, if you were to rank the Sabres prospects, nobody probably has him as the best, and probably not even as the second best. But even for that pick at the time, it was a high upside pick. The skating, the shot, it was the type of pick they hadn't made in years. And it kind of signaled, and you would see throughout the rest of their draft, where they finally started picking Russian players that, okay, like the mentality is changing here. Like this is not the Sabres of old. Will it work? Will it not work? Who knows? But this is different. They're taking a different approach, and they're doing things differently this time. Then we get to the end of the draft night. Right as we're about to end, we get word that Sam Reinhart's heading to Florida. And we wouldn't find out till the next day what the return was going to be, but it finally comes out. A 2022 first-round pick and some sixth-round goaltender named Devin Levi. And the buzz was sort of killed. Because you're thinking, Rasmus Ristolainen gets us this, this, and this. Oh my God, what's Reinhart going to get? What's Jack Eichel going to get? And obviously, the reception at the time, it was disappointment.
Yeah, makes you wonder what the class of NHL GMs think about certain players. Like maybe big, strong size is still a really strong tool to use as trade leverage.
Folks,
Because
if you're listening to this, teach your kids how to play defense right-handed. They
yeah,
will go far in life.
jeez, yeah. The reception was a little muted, but getting anything was great because again, going into the last year of his contract, it's like he wasn't going to command. You could have lost him for nothing. And I'm sure as the season went on, he would have commanded less and less because I bet the team wasn't going to be great. And the team wasn't that good. So the leverage could have just kept going down. But, you pulled trig. And I don't think Sam wanted to be around anyway. So,
And we've learned that that's the basis for a winger 1 year away from free agency. The Buchnevich trade from the Rangers to the Blues. He got traded for a second and a roster player. Kevin Fiala got traded for a first, and Brock Faber. That's the blueprint. Like Sam Reinhart, I'm not saying it's a great value trade. I'm just saying it's sort of the norm. And the fact that they got Levi, I mean, he didn't play college that season, but he was coming off that monster World Juniors. And obviously that first round pick turned into Yuri Kulik, even with Levi. Because the night before at the draft, I remember I wanted Wallstead with that Roseanne pick. And I think you knew, because there were also rumors at the time they were maybe going to trade Reinhart to Columbus and get back Merzinglands or Corpusalo, which, obviously would have been horrible. But they were looking for a goalie in that trade. And Levi was the guy they settled on. And, obviously it's been pretty smooth sailing since. So looking at Reinhardt's time in Florida, I think Florida wins that trade. I mean, how can you
yeah,
not? How can you not?
100%.
But the Sabres got what they needed out of that deal.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens with Levi? Kulik's stock has never been lower for some reason. But Yeah, Reinhardt, 57 goal season, probably going to win the cup. Knock on wood. It
Probably going to get $13 million
yeah,
next season.
gonna get paid.
Get this
If they
man
want to,
deserves his bag.
if they want to win the trade, just sign him. There you go.
Yeah,
There you
just
go.
re-sign him. That's
Get
it.
free assets.
Give him $12 million.
Then we get on to the long, agonizing summer that was 2021, where day by day you're waiting for the Eichel trade to happen, and it's not happening. And it was something that just never seemed to end. But you look at that summer. The plan was clear: keep the team competitive at the very least, but also they weren't spending much. Somehow they dragged Craig Anderson out of retirement, which proved to be a great move. Signed Vinny Hinostroza, which seemed very backed by the newly built analytics staff, which was another thing that Adams was bringing to the table. He hired Jason Carmanos as his assistant, and then bringing over Sam Ventura from Pittsburgh has proven to be a godsend. So the Sabres, they're trying to be economic, efficient, effective. They're trying to be the three-headed dragon heading into that season. And obviously that next season starts off great. Don Granato, who had been named the full-time head coach, which I guess, we can talk about that for a moment now, because I remember at the time there was some discourse about should they go after a more established guy. And obviously they just ended up removing the interim tag from his title.
Yep. Yeah, and the start of that season was I have to add, was an absolute all-time low for the Sabres fans in attendance. Like, I have never seen more blue seats in my entire life on TV. I was just, even the home opener, I was like, what's going on? Like, why is there no one there? And then I realized, oh yeah, the team sucked last year. COVID locked everyone out. All the Canadian people couldn't renew their season tickets basically, so they, probably stopped and they were like, I'm not paying for this. And then everyone here had all apathy towards them and they didn't want to go down and go jump through all the hoops, that they had in place at the time to get into the arena. And it was sad. It was sad to see just how empty it was. And, you know, props to Don Granato at the time. He tried to keep the team competitive, and they were competitive at a point, especially without Eichel.
I still think it was the right move to keep him on. I mean, you're headed towards a rebuild. The team finished good. He's a guy. He's been a developmental coach. Obviously, he ended up not taking the steps necessary to win, but it was still ended up well, because going into that season, did you think Tage Thompson was going to be a top 6 forward? Did you really
No.
did you think Rasmus Dahlin was going to hit number 1 defenseman status by the end of that season? You hoped for it, but he started off terribly that season. Found his game.
hmm
Even Casey Middlestat found his game. Jeff Skinner refound his game.
Thank God.
I said this when Granato got fired. He left them with shinier toys than when he left, or
Yeah.
when he got hired.
And I think we all really knew deep down from the beginning that he wasn't going to be the guy to get this team to where it needed to be at the very end. He was there to, polish everything up, try and set the next coach up for, an easier job. And I think he's done that. I think he did that successfully. And I think we'll see a lot of that going into next season.
The Jack Eichel trade. After months and months and months going around in circles, hearing
Ugh.
rumors, surgery, like just frustrating as hell. And I'll say this. I don't think any wider NHL fan, I'm sure there were people in the NHL that thought that Kevyn Adams was not going to get what he wanted for Jack Eichel. Not with the contract, not with the injury, not with the leverage that teams had over him. I mean, geez, I remember, dude. I remember rolling my eyes, hearing that it might drag out to the trade deadline that year.
It was like just rip the Band-Aid off. Everyone would just wanted it to be over so quick. Everyone knew it was coming, and there were so many rumors being thrown around too. You heard rumors about Matthew
Well,
Tkachuk in
the night
Calgary.
before, Kevin Weeks sends. I mean, I was like, I remember I sprinted to my PS4 and like booted up a franchise mode to like get Kachuk on the Sabres and play through. It was a fun like 6 hour span, but yeah, the next morning rolls in. Andrew Peters reports that it happened at like 6 in the morning. Um, and then it went down. Jack Eichel was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, and the son of a gun did it. Kevyn Adams got what he wanted. He got the top prospect in Peyton Krebs. He got the first round pick. He got the second round pick. And he got Alex Tuck. I remember looking back at it at the time that, he's this good power forward top six that he probably wanted because he's from Buffalo and he grew up a Sabres fan, which is true, but getting that $4.75 million deal for him, taking that away from Vegas, a team in their cup window, essentially, it's a good bit of business, man. It really is. I'll still debate. Screw it. If Jack Eichel doesn't have that playoff run, and it was a fantastic playoff run, fantastic. I think Tuck and Eichel they've basically been at the same playing level. And look, I know. I know. Um, I know that Eichel has the cup. So yeah, they win the trade. They got what they needed. They got the cup. They win the trade out of principle. I'm just saying, Tuck and Eichel. You look at their advanced numbers. You look at their production. Alex Tuck, I think, has outscored Eichel since being traded there, even in the last 2 seasons. I'll fact check that. But 2 seasons ago, I know he did. 2 seasons, he
I
definitely
remember
did.
that. I remember that was a big talking point for a lot of people after the trade. Everyone was kind of joking around about like, oh, Alex Tuck has more points. We won the trade. We won the trade. Yada yada yada. But I gotta say, at the end of the day, I love Alex Tuck. I really do. But he's not a Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, he played the game when he was in Buffalo, man. He looked like Gilbert Perreault out there. The way he'd skate, he'd go up the ice. It was almost McDavid-esque, the way he'd
Okay,
just be
all
able to
right.
carry the puck
Okay,
in.
all right, all right. That's an no. He's not McDavid-esque.
I'm talking about with his skating ability. He's not Connor McDavid. He doesn't have the assist ability. He doesn't have the scoring ability, but just the way he just looked 10 times faster than everyone. And that's what Connor McDavid looks like. I'm not like comparing apples to apples here, but I'm just saying a portion of his game. It
Yeah.
just, he just looked so much better than everyone when he was on the ice with whoever he was on the ice with.
So in the last 2 seasons, Jack Eichel has scored 134 points in 130 games. Alex Tuck has scored 138 points in 149 games. So Eichel has the slightly higher production clip, but like that's a real similar level of play. I know it's just points, but even if you look at like their WAR, it's really similar. Like it is. It is. I'm not here to argue that the Sabres they won the trade. Alex Tuck's better than Eichel, but the the point is to get back to Kevyn Adams. It's a good deal of business. It is. He did the thing that's commendable is that he got what he wanted. And
hmm
I don't think like if you go back in time to 2021, nobody thought he was going to get what he wanted.
Yeah, he wasn't going to get pushed around, and that was also probably why the trade dragged into the season a little bit.
He
Because
was patient.
he was fielding offers probably that entire summer, maybe going back into last season before locker cleanout. Maybe he could have, had some feelers were sent out there, but yeah, he was a patient man and it paid off. He
It,
got
he,
he got his guy, he got the prospect, he got the picks, and
when you look at Kevyn Adams' tenure, his greatest strength is also his most frustrating weakness. It's his patience. And we saw the worst of it this season. We really did, and we'll get there. Back in 2021, you saw the best of it. He waited. He dragged out that entire summer. It sucked. I would never want to live through that again. But god damn it, I'm happy with what he got. I am.
Yeah.
And he turned it into Noah Osland, and he turned that second round pick. He turned it into Jordan Greenway. Peyton Krebs obviously hasn't panned out to what we want him to be. He's still an NHL player, and at the time, he was still highly looked at. So all in all, I really I commend him for that trade. Even now looking back on it, even with the cup, even with, whatever. And that's, the rest of that season, it goes smoothly. Obviously, they have that great finish, and they finish the year with some good vibes. But going into that next season, you also still know, hey, we're still in the development stage. Yeah, Tage had a great finish. Yeah, Dahlin had a great finish. Yeah, Skinner had a great season. What is this team moving forward? We don't know who our core pieces are. We have an idea, but we don't. And so he trusts the core again going into that next season. He's going to bring up Owen Power. He's going to bring up Jack Quinn. He's going to bring up JJ Peterka. And once again, that patience. They had $30 million in cap space that offseason. Who knows
So
if they
much
had
cap.
who knows if he had the free reign to use it? Who knows? But maybe he could have. And he didn't. And he was like, no, we're sticking to the plan. We're going to trust the youth this season. And it paid off. They surprised the league. They became the third highest goal scoring team in hockey, with the youngest team in hockey, with the team that spent the least amount of money in hockey. And his patience paid off because, we really haven't talked about it. I think we mentioned him. But Tage Thompson, someone they did not have to give the light of day. And even going back to his first offseason as GM, that contract he gave him a 3-year deal in 2020 at $1.4 million, which is such a good deal to look back on. You either have a guy, because at the time you're thinking, okay, maybe he can still become a top 6 forward, a 20-goal guy. And if he does, great. You have him at $1.4 million for the next few seasons. And if he doesn't, well, you can just bury him in the AHL. It's not a huge cap hit. And look, it worked out perfect, but patience, dude. Patience, it paid off.
They could have sent him to Siberia quickly because the turnaround he had, it almost felt like it was overnight. He
And
just came into the next season, he was a completely different person.
and it was Granato's idea to put him at center, which probably the best decision that Don Granato had ever made
Hmm.
in his coaching career. But, I'm sure that was a dual decision. I think Adam said, Granato came into his office and hey, I want to try him at center next season. And they said, screw it, give him the opportunity. This is the season to find out. And then the season after, he just explodes. He becomes a superstar, a goal scoring machine. And, Dahlin, who they had been patient with, became a superstar, had a Norris caliber season. And Dylan Cousins, and they were kind of slow with Quinn and Peterka at first, but then boom, the kid line forms and they start producing at a high level. The process was clear. This is what they had planned, and it was so frustrating at points. And look, could they have done more? Could they have made that splash in the offseason? Sure. But you can't take away that 22-23 season away from them. You can't, in my opinion. I think it's funny because you look at Kevyn Adams, you just look at the Sabres past few seasons. 2021, 2022 ended great. The last 30, 40 games were great hockey. And then you basically had a full season of great hockey in 22-23. It's
And 8 game stretch.
yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah. What that was so dumb.
Just
So
dude, just one point. 1 point in that stretch. Just one.
they forgot how to play hockey for a month. But like it's a lot. That's a large enough sample size where like I look at last season, I'm just like that's not who this team is. I don't believe that. And at the end of the day, I give Adams credit for that 22-23 season. And then we get to the towards the end of it, and you can look at some of his his draft. He made draft acquisitions at that deadline. He got Jordan Greenway. Like everybody was clamoring for an addition at that deadline. Like everybody wanted one, and he went out there and he got Greenway, who was a type of player they didn't have. He was big. He forechecked. He penalty killed. And then the end of that season comes, and Devin Levi, who once again, someone who they were patient with. He could have came over to Buffalo over his rookie season in Northeastern, which obviously the decision is in his hands. But he stayed there for another season, came to Buffalo hot off another great NCAA season, and helped the Sabres. They almost do it, and you know what? They come up short. They're 1 point out, and I think that's where you bookend that point in the Adams era. The teardown, the rebuilds. You know what? Honestly, like the fact it only took 2 years if you think about it took them 2 years to go from the most poverty franchise in the NHL, 1 point out of a playoff spot. Like, I'm sorry.
Quick turnaround.
You can't discredit Adams for that. You can't.
No.
Even if you're his biggest, because we're getting to last season, and there's gonna be criticism handed out, and it's gonna be well deserved. You can't take that away. The process changed. They became a more progressive organization in terms of how they use data. They changed their draft strategies. They had a plan in place. I mean, hey, in 21-22, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka tearing up the AHL. They played a combined 5 games in the NHL that season. They absolutely could have made that roster.
There's that patience again.
Patience. Peyton Krebs could have started on the Sabres right away. They sent him to the AHL. Mattias Samuelsson. They were patient, but then he worked his way up because he was better than half the defensemen on that roster. Patience. And we're going to talk about that even more once we get to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. It's patience. It's the word that Adams has defined. And look, I'm sick of hearing it now, but we wouldn't be here now if he wasn't so patient.
Right. We know what we have, and we know that we have a great core again. We just have to, find those last few pieces, whether it be organizationally or on the ice, and that's when we get into this off season, and hopefully it's put together finally, because the one word I'd use to describe last season was stagnation.
By this point, you've identified the core, and you've started to see deals handed out. And we neglected to mention Tage Thompson, 7 years, $7.14 million. At the time, everybody's going nuts, going like, what are you, well, I should say the wider NHL, they're going, what are you doing? This guy, sure, he scored 38 goals, but 7 years, $7.14 million. They said, screw it. Like, we're taking a chance. And Mattias Samuelsson, hey, 7 years, $4.82 million?
Something like that.
$1 million. Dylan Cousins, in the midst of a 30-plus goal breakout season. Hey, 7 years, $7.1 million. It's another thing that changed. He's signing deals early. This is not, he's not repeating, waiting for Sam Reinhart to hit RFA. And he's not handing an empty checkbook to Jack Eichel, which that was a different situation at the time. I mean, the organization treated him as a savior. There's no way he wasn't getting paid on that deal. But the process changed. They were signing guys early based off potential. And then we head into that summer. Okay, you're 1 point out of the playoffs. And coming into training camp, the GM says the window is open. You've entered a new phase of the rebuild. You are no longer in teardown/rebuild. You are in the, I don't even know what you call it, but just the win stage. Like it's time to win.
Just to make the playoff stage.
And look, his off season did not reflect that. It didn't. They drafted well, and we've neglected to mention the 2022 draft. He grabs Matthew Savoy, phenomenal pick for value wise. He grabs Noah Osland, kind of off the board, but hey, he still looks really, really good coming off of Monster World Juniors this year. And then nabbing Yuri Kulik at 28. It's like,
Kind of reminds me of the JJ Peterka
yeah,
pick.
grabbing a guy with a first round grade, and obviously he went first round that year, but grabbing someone with a higher grade than probably what he deserved and nabbing him. And then the 23 draft, where, I mean, look, when I did the draft blog, I put, there were three guys in the dream scenario. It was Matvey Michkov, David Reinbacher, and Zach Benson. And they got Zach Benson.
You just fell right into their lap.
And, you can discredit being like, well, he fell into his lap. It's not a hard pick, but hey, other teams passed on him. They're not the team to make that mistake now.
Yeah. Feels good. Feels good to not be the organization that makes that mistake.
But then a day later, Jack Quinn, out for the summer.
Terrible.
Tears his Achilles. And you head into free agency and, okay, this team, they need to improve on defense at the very least. Improve on defense. And now they need to replace Jack Quinn. And, they need to figure out their goalie situation. Should they get a veteran guy? Preferably, yes. But you can't go into next season with 3 goaltenders on the roster again. And he just missed the mark every single time. And I remember, because I remember defending him walking into this season. I remember defending him because I saw what he was doing. He was being patient again. He was like, patience got us here last year. We're going to do it again. And just like the previous summer where his only additions, Ilya Lyubushkin, who he ended up trading later that summer.
The Boosh.
And Eric Comrie. Fringes of the roster. That's what he was improving in. He signs Connor Clifton to a 3-year deal at $3.33 million a year. And he signs Eric Johnson to 1 year at $3.25 million. And for the most part, that's it. He brings back Tyson Jost. He brings back Girgensons and Okposo. He doesn't move any of the goaltenders. He walks into the season with 3 guys battling for spots, but they weren't battling for spots because they all were on the roster to begin the season. It was a big misstep. It was straight up. And look, the funny thing is, I still believe that team should have made the playoffs. And that's why I defended him.
Really?
You don't think that roster should have made the playoffs? It was the same roster from the year before.
I mean, yeah, but you go back at the previous year, and yeah, some of those guys they're great. Don't get me wrong; they're all great players. There was the argument being thrown around about how a lot of those guys had shooting benders, or some of them had career years, and I don't want to say they had career years because I 100% believe that they could repeat what they did, but I don't know, just something wasn't right. Something wasn't right with the team. I think we were blinded in the offseason about how close we were, and we were like, we just need to put a few more pieces together here and there, and got punched in the mouth. No pun intended, Dylan Cousins, but we got, a dose of reality pretty early on.
Well, and Adams, it's just the weirdest thing is he said something was off in training camp. And look, if something's off in training camp and you were thinking about that during the time, and I get it, the team never had an extended losing streak past 3 or 4 games. They were chronically 500. But man, I still continue to look at that Columbus Blue Jackets game. You lose 9-4 in your own building. The fans are chanting for the coach to be fired. And God damn it, he was patient at the worst time.
Yeah.
Not the worst time, but it was just, you knew. There was no coming back from that. There was no coming back. I know they came back and won 9-3 the next game, but you knew,
Literally just the story of the season.
and it probably
How
saved his job. And
it probably did.
it's a testament to the players. I mean, they never quit on the guy. You can
Yeah.
say that about this group. They never
Which
quit on
is
Granato.
great. Which is great. And those are the kinds of players you want around your organization. But yeah, I agree. It should have been one of those, Todd McClellan in season,
I mean,
get him
yeah,
out of here.
Lindy Ruff got fired in March.
Yeah.
Like the Devils waited a long time, but they still did it. And yeah, the LA Kings like had a monster start to the season, and they faded, and they were like, "Well, gotta make a change." It was frustrating because they never had an extended losing streak. There were at least two, there were two instances where like these were games that should have gotten at least someone fired, at least a coach. A coach. You lose 9-4 in your own building, nothing happens. But it's like, hey, they win 9-3 the next game, and then there was the Anaheim Ducks game in
Ugh.
Anaheim.
Which Anaheim Ducks game?
The one in Anaheim where they're on ESPN national television, and they're getting bounced around by the Anaheim Ducks.
Connor Clifton blows a tire in the neutral
Oh,
zone.
funniest goal of the season. And it's like, okay, like what are we doing here? Okay, you had your cute little, oh, we're gonna start playing the way we know how to play now, and then that still happened. But then it's like the next game, the very next game, they dominate the LA Kings, and then they beat the Sharks to end the road trip. So it's like they had a terrible start, but they finished the road trip well. So it's like, well, we can't fire him. It's like you were just going around in circles.
It was weird. It made it the season was a season like I've never seen before. It just made no sense. Like in years past, they were just bad. Those Eichel years, like they were just not good at all. This year, I kind of agree with you. It's like that roster wasn't terrible. Like there was a couple bad players on there, Eric Johnson, um, but they weren't built to fail. Like if they strung a few more wins together, they were in easy. Like, I don't
It
know.
was
Like
it was the end of because if they were out early in the season, because they were dealing with injuries early in the season. Cousins was wearing the face shield. Tage had with like 2 or 3 injuries. Tuck
Quinn
was
was
gone
still
for a
out.
while. Quinn was out for a while. Like if they were in a hole so deep from the start of the season that they just couldn't get out of, fine. Look, we watched the games. There was a point. They were 3 points out in March, and they could have been the one day. I think if they had beaten the Red Wings, they would have been a point out. Like they were in that race, very much so. And it was clear. I mean, it was crystal clear that they weren't going to get there with Granato.
Yeah,
Um, and it's just the patience backfired. It just
right.
and it didn't even have to just be Granato. Like a coach,
Something. The
something.
janitor.
The restructure the staff.
Yeah.
Like, do something. Make a hire.
Flip
I
something
don't know.
around. Bring in a therapist, a shrink, someone. I don't know, some
And
lady with a bunch of stones who
and
just brings something in to change the vibes.
your only forward addition was Eric Robinson.
Boom. Roster saved.
If and for one thing, like if your plan was, we're just gonna get Patrick Kane for Jack Quinn, like fine, like I was very against that at the time, proved to be wrong, but like if that was your plan, throw the friggin' bag at him.
Yeah.
Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't. I don't know. It's just yeah. It's frustrating to look back on. It really is.
Is
I
that how that expression goes? You can't have your cake and eat it too?
think so.
Because if you have the cake, can't you eat it? Anyway,
I don't know, man. This has been a
is it
long
cake?
episode.
We need to
Oh god, the
record
return
another
of Is It
episode
Cake.
to Is It Cake to figure this out. All right? This No, but
This is where JP would interject and correct one of us
this
and
this
call one of us an idiot. He would
this
either
would
say, "Jonah, you're rambling," or "Christian, shut up."
this would be
He
JP's
got it
first
right.
sentence of the podcast. He'd be like, "Oh, is it cake?" There, yep, it is cake. Um, but I think when it's all said and done, and you saw it at the end of the season, um, he's not in the patience mode anymore. You saw it at the end of season
And
press conference.
you saw it before then because he made the Middlestat trade.
Right.
And that was a very important to me, that was a very important sign. That was something he did not have to do. He didn't have to do it then. And he didn't have to do it at all. He didn't have to trade Casey Middlestat. He really didn't. I think you could have easily gotten him locked in 3 years, little over 5 million. He probably upped his value to around 6 with the Avalanche in the playoffs, but I don't think if he would have justified that with the Sabres. You
Mm.
could have had your center spine set, but he was like, I messed up. I got to make a big swing. Here's the opportunity to. And we don't know what's going to happen with Bowen Byram. Started off great. Obviously regressed back to the mean once he got nice and settled in Buffalo.
That's Sabres hockey, baby.
But he made a big swing. And that's something he's made big swings. Well, he's made big swings in the draft. That was the first trade where it's like, in terms of adding, because he did the teardown, amazing. Full props, as close to an A plus as you can get with the teardown. When it comes to trying to win, to try to put together a winning hockey team, he has something to prove. But I think the Middlestat trade, even if it goes south, and I don't think it's going to, but even if it does, it's a sign of life that he made a trade at the moment. He went out and made a big splash. Arguably the most surprise trade. Well, I would say arguably the most surprise trade of the deadline, but the Tomas Hertl trade exists. And made a basically an offseason move at the deadline. Then obviously he dumps off. He somehow gets another masterclass. Gets a 4th-round pick for Eric Johnson without any retention, and then does right by his player and trades Okposo to the Florida Panthers. And next time we speak, he will probably have won the Stanley Cup.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
And so here we are. Here we are. He has fired Don Granato. He finally made the move. It was too late. It was too late to do it, but he did do it. And there was a fear. We had a fear that he was going to keep him around going into next season. But I think that Middlestat trade was a sign of life, and then that Granato being fired was the confirmation that he knows. He knows he messed up. Next summer defines basically it's gonna determine whether or not he's employed by the team in about a year's time.
Yeah, he already stated how aggressive he wants to be, and um, I guess you could see that there's a sense of urgency in the organization with how fast they hired Lindy Ruff. So, um, I'm expecting a month from now that there's a couple of new pieces on this roster, and maybe in the middle of the summer there's a trade or something. I don't know, but we need. I said it last episode. We need a top 6 guy. We need a third line, second line center, and we need a right-handed defenseman. Those are the big 3 things you need. You got $24 million to work with. You got players to work with. You got prospects to work with. You got picks to work with. You got all the tools at your disposal. Go
Cue
ahead and
the
make it happen.
cue the Oppenheimer music.
Me, I'm not rambling.
Yep.
This episode's been the Jonah Aaron's Yap Fest.
Look, I'm trying. Hey, I'm taking us through. Now you're making me feel bad. Go ahead, end the episode. How do you want to close? You're up. This is your time to shine.
I'll end the
JP's not
episode.
here.
I'll end the episode by shotgunning a Coors Light. I
Well, how do you
just
feel
like
about Kevyn Adams?
no.
We've gone through this trip down memory lane. Where are you at with him?
Overall, if I had to break it down, I'd give his drafting, somewhere around an A. His free agency acquisitions on the other end of the spectrum, probably around a D. And um, I'm I'm happy with his tenure so far. Obviously, we haven't seen playoff success. We haven't seen the playoffs, but there's been a culture change in this organization. I feel the fans are more engaged. Just going to that event the other night was awesome. I'd never seen the inside of the Sabres locker room before, and I got to see it.
Yeah.
I
Thanks
got to
for
go
waiting for me.
around. Dude, we could have went in. You walked right in. You went
I
right into the bowl.
I thought I don't know. That's my
We
bad.
walked in after you did because we
Well, I
were
didn't know
waiting
they were going to open the
upstairs.
locker room the last time we were there. I mean, if you want to talk about something funny, is the complete shift in vibe from the one back in March to this one. Back in
Yeah,
March, everybody walked in silence. I think like five people clapped for Granado and Adams when they walked out there.
we got some food.
Yeah, we did get
There
some
was a little
food.
there's a little food.
Um, you had hecklers, you had questionable questions. Um, Very different vibe. Then you walk into this one, they got the cameras set up, you got people on the floor, you get to walk through the tunnel to get in there, and
Yeah, I've never been back there either. That's where the players warm up. I didn't even
totally,
realize it.
totally different vibe. They would never have had cameras at the last Blue and
No.
Gold Insights, and I know that one was closed to season ticket holders, but still, it's funny. Very different vibe.
Yeah, it was a little, but I even give him props for having that at the time because, you didn't have to do that. And in regimes past, they didn't do that. They probably hadn't done that until what? I think Darcy was the last one who used to have those like, those pressers, but it was
Well,
usually
it's always like,
media
well, it was
members
usually like Ted Black would like come and
or
address the
Ted
media.
Black.
He was usually
Yeah.
like the guy. He
But
was like,
yeah, Adams is the first guy in a long time that I've seen
yeah,
really
and
take an
something
engagement with the fans.
I think that really is an underrated part. I think people get frustrated. People call it like a fake face or fake personality. Like the guy is like you compare him to Jason Botterill, who someone used the analogy he looked like a used car salesman half the time,
Hmm.
and Tim Murray was like a robot. Um, like
No personality.
it's a completely different vibe with Kevyn Adams, and it's one of the things I'm most appreciative. And it was something I was appreciative with Granado. At the very least, they were good listens. Like you listen to them talk, and you're like, okay, these guys. At the very least, they know hockey. I feel like they know what they're doing. Maybe they make the wrong decisions in the end, but they're not laughing stocks. Maybe they're
Hmm.
not good enough, but they're not. They're not laughing stocks. What would you say is like the most underrated part of, I guess, Kevyn Adams? Like, what do you think is overlooked? I guess you could even maybe be overrated. What do you think people don't talk about enough with him?
I think made a good point, or you made a good point throughout the episode, is just the patience he had. Um, going back to 2020, this organization had already been almost a decade without being in the playoffs. And Kevyn Adams coming into it knew that this was going to be a job that took multiple years, and he didn't let, outside noise persuade him into making any rash decisions. And he wanted to set this organization up for long-term success with through drafting and through, smart asset management. And over the course of those years, they built up fan engagement in a way I've never seen before. So I think it all comes back to that, being patient and, that Bills-esque motto of trusting the process. Even though the process it's not quite done yet, I think that's really what it boils down to. So I think just the whole
Plus,
episode we talked about
yeah,
was,
not to mention, they've done right by a lot of players as well.
yeah, I mean, that's true. I like that, but also I want to win hockey games. So it's like there's only so much feel good stuff I could really take. It's like, oh, we did right by Sam Reinhart, I guess. We did right by Kyle Oposo. Uh, I don't know if we did right by Jack Eichel, but there's only so much of that. There's only so much, emotional battery I have for other people before I'm just like, all right, when do we get our fix?
Well, hopefully it's soon.
Yeah,
Um,
hopefully it's soon. Hopefully it's next season.
I hoped you enjoyed this yap session, as Christian so
Good old
perfectly
Yap
put it.
Fest.
I thought it'd be a fun exercise to take a trip. Just look back at the last 4 years. It's an interesting time for the Adams era. This is really this is the make or break point. He has to put on the summer of his career, the summer of Adams, as I put it. It He has to impress.
Yeah, hopefully a year from now we're talking about a conference final appearance and not a regime change again.
I thought you were gonna say we're looking at a contract extension because I was gonna correct you. I'm like, no, he got one. He got one like a year ago.
Yeah, he'll be around. So, well, maybe.
Hopefully he will be.
I hope so for this organization. He's a good person.
Yeah,
It's just, you fire him because it's like it's something you need to do because it's obviously not working out, but it's just he's great to have around and he's
yeah.
great for the fans
Well,
and he's
I think the what I started with when I was talking about him is look, everybody thought he was going to be a yes man
mhm,
for Pagula, and look, I'm sorry, he's not that. He's not a yes man. He's a good um like he's a line of communication that's obviously this is Pagula's guy. This is the guy that supposedly they'd been grooming him for the role for a while. Who knows if that was true or not? Who knows if they plan to throw him in as a first time GM? But he's proven to be more than that. A yes man would not. He's built up the analytics staff. He's changed the process for a lot of things in the organization, and he I don't know if Terry Pagula would have wanted a long and drawn out rebuild. And this, like I
yeah.
said, it wasn't long and drawn out, but I think Kevyn was the guy to say, like, after the locker cleanout interviews back in 2021, like, hey, we have to do this. We have to restart. There's no going back. Yeah. Terry Pagula, I forget when he was quoted as saying this. I don't know if he was interviewed once, but he always stood by the motto. He was like, if we have Jack Eichel, we're gonna be okay. Like as long as we got Jack, like we can do it. And I'm sure he was very hesitant to like let go of the idea he could win with that core. And like I said, I wouldn't have been surprised if Adams was the one to be like, we have to try to do it without him. We have to make a
hmm
change.
Yeah.
And it's led us to this moment in time, which
I
we are.
think and I think he's set up the organization even if he does part at some point. He set them up for long-term success in the front office, just building up that staff and um hopefully they've taken a page out of, fan engagement book because before he was around, it wasn't great, there wasn't really much going on. Now I feel like I hear about events all the time going on. So hopefully it stays that way for a long time. And hopefully the organization has learned their lesson from years past because it's just been too long, This shouldn't have taken this much time, but you can't go back and change the past at this point. So, you know, just look forward to next season and hopefully we got a couple new pieces on the roster and maybe we could finally put some hardware on the shelf in the arena.
Hopefully, hopefully we're in for a season of fun.
I hope.
Looking ahead here, this is going to be a pretty busy time because the cup could be raised as soon as tomorrow night. Um, we're definitely going to we plan on doing looking at the defensive class of free agents and targets. I think I'm going to try and put out some sort of draft episode, pre-draft episode. Might go solo for that one. Um, and then I think we plan on doing our draft reactions again. I don't know. Are you going to be in town, Christian?
Uh, when is
Ne-
this?
this is next Friday.
This upcoming Friday?
No, next Friday.
Oh, okay. So not next, but the following week.
The 28th.
Yeah, I'll be around because I'm out of town this weekend, so I'll be around.
Good, good. Thought I would have to call in JP.
No, JP's got bigger fish to fry, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, should be a fun week. Got our off-season preview coming out. We'll have a draft. I'll have the draft episode just for my personal favorites, but I'll also be previewing some draft prospects in a blog probably next week before the draft. So yeah, stay tuned for that. As I said, stay tuned for our draft reactions episode for night 1, and then we'll react to whatever the hell they do in free agency. It's gonna be a fun few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the season just ends tomorrow.
Me too.
Bring on the rumors.
Yeah, we need no more actual hockey talk. We need general management talk.
That's right. All right, but I think that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to follow us on Twitter at the Sabre Report. Follow us on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok. Go give our friends over at the Buffalo Sports Talk podcast a listen. If you want updates for the pod, you can follow us at Sabre Report Pod. And I think other than that, that's going to do it. Christian, how's the dryer? Do we have an update?
We do. It is back. It's functioning, but like the new dryers, how you have like there's time dry where it's like a manual. You have to manually input stuff, and then there's just like, regular dry or quick dry where you can just press it, it'll sense it.
Mm-hmm.
The motherboard is shot, so you have to do time dry and you have to take the eco function off of it, and then you have to manually input the time and the temperature. But it works. So it's a little bit of a process, but I haven't shrunk any clothes yet, so that's good.
I think it might be time to put her out of her misery.
My
How
dad
long
is
have-
too stubborn. He will no way. We just
My
got
dad's the
those.
same way. He would be like, "It still works."
We had our old washer and dryer for such a long time. Like we just got these a few years ago. So he'll replace it. He'll go through motherboards. He's not changing the unit. Will not happen.
Well, maybe we'll have to start a GoFundMe for you or something. I don't know. This has to be solved. Can't have you missing episodes for this anymore.
I could do an episode from the laundromat.
Maybe.
You just hear the whir of dryers and washers going on in the background.
Just like the white noise of it all. It's like,
It'd be relaxing.
yeah, as if we don't put enough people to sleep.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you very much for listening. Feel free to leave a review, and we'll talk to you next time. Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.